The Grammy Museum had seen international stars before, but when SB19 took the stage, something changed. The room got quieter, the vocals took center stage, and suddenly, the biggest question was no longer whether Filipino Ppop could go global. It was whether SB19 could prove they belong there. Then, just 48 hours later, Chicago gave them an even bigger test at Lollapalooza. What happened next changed the story completely. Like, share, and subscribe for the full breakdown. SB19 did not walk into Los Angeles for an ordinary concert. On July 28th, they entered the Grammy Museum for Global Spin Live, an event built around an intimate conversation about their career and upcoming music, followed by a special performance. The program was moderated by Emily May, and the Grammy Museum officially lists the event as sold out. That setting changes everything. This was not a massive arena where production, lighting, and crowd noise could dominate the experience. It was a controlled room where the artists themselves had to carry the moment. The museum also described SB19 as a group with more than 1 billion career streams worldwide and highlighted their Billboard history and growing international profile. That means the performance came with expectations before the first note was even sung. The real challenge was simple. Could SB19 turn impressive statistics into an undeniable live experience? The Grammy Museum was the first test. Why live vocals are becoming SB19's secret weapon. This is where SB19 becomes much more interesting than another successful pop group. Their performances demand several things at once: singing, choreography, rap delivery, harmonies, timing, and individual character. There is very little room for one member to carry everything. Pablo, Josh, Stell, Ken, and Justin bring different vocal and performance identities. And that contrast is part of what makes the group work as a 5-member unit. The Grammy Museum itself emphasizes the group's 5-member structure and describes their rise as one of the major stories in Southeast Asian music. The important point is that streaming numbers cannot reproduce what happens when 5 performers have to deliver those parts in real time. A studio recording can be polished endlessly. A live stage cannot. That makes vocal consistency increasingly valuable as SB19 moves into unfamiliar markets. The next level of their global campaign is not convincing Filipino fans. It is convincing people who have never heard them before that the performance itself is worth remembering. The 2 songs that changed the Grammy Museum moment. The reported Grammy Museum setlist makes the performance even more significant because the songs represented 2 different chapters of SB19's story. Setlist documentation lists Gento and Waka's from the July 28th appearance. Gento carries the weight of the breakthrough era, while Waka's belongs to the newer chapter surrounding the 2026 album Waka's at Simula. That contrast matters. Gento was not simply another popular song. The Grammy Museum identifies it as a global viral breakthrough and notes that it debuted at number 8 on Billboard's World Digital Song Sales chart. The museum also points to Visa, which debuted at number 6 on the same chart. So the performance effectively placed SB19's past and present in the same room. One song represented the track that helped introduce their sound to a wider audience. The other represented where the group was heading next. It was less a nostalgia performance than a statement of growth. The most interesting part of the host story is not whether Emily May looked surprised. It is why her reaction carries more weight than an ordinary audience reaction. May was the moderator for SB19's Grammy Museum appearance, and the museum has also used her to moderate other Global Spin live conversations with major international acts, including a tease. The format itself is designed to showcase global artists through conversation about their careers, music, and creative process before the live performance begins. SB19 did not have time to celebrate. The timing is what makes this story feel bigger. SB19's Grammy Museum appearance took place on July 28th in Los Angeles. 2 days later, on July 30th, Lollapalooza opened at Grant Park in Chicago, where SB19 were booked as the first homegrown Filipino act ever to perform at the festival. The Grammy Museum itself identified that Chicago appearance as another major milestone for the group. That creates a brutal test of consistency. A strong performance in Los Angeles is one thing. Repeating that standard while traveling, rehearsing, handling media obligations, and preparing for a completely different festival environment is another. At Lollapalooza, they were no longer performing inside an intimate museum program built around their story. The most important thing was not the crowd. It was a 10-song set. The headline is that SB19 made history. The more revealing story is what they actually had to deliver once the history-making moment began. A 10-song festival set leaves very little room for hesitation. Every track has to establish its purpose quickly. Every transition has to maintain momentum, and every member has to remain recognizable while the group still sounds like one unit. Why Lollapalooza changes SB19's global position. Lollapalooza changes the conversation because SB19 are now entering a discovery environment rather than simply entering another concert venue. The 2026 Chicago Festival runs from July 30th through August 2nd in Grant Park and brings together more than 100 musical acts across 9 stages, creating an enormous mix of genres, audiences, and artists. That difference is crucial. A dedicated SB19 concert begins with people who already chose SB19. A festival works differently. Someone can encounter the group because they were moving between stages, following another performer, or simply looking for something unfamiliar. Suddenly, the music has to introduce the artists, without relying on earlier knowledge. That is where the live performance becomes especially important. The language barrier becomes less important when the audience can immediately hear the vocals, feel the rhythm, and understand the performance energy. SB19 are no longer being presented only as successful Filipino artists. They are being placed directly inside a global festival environment where unfamiliar listeners can make their own judgment. The stage becomes the introduction. Behind the performances, another transformation is happening. On June 25th, 2026, SB19 signed with United Talent Agency for global representation in all areas, including live touring and brand partnerships. That is important because it shows their international expansion is becoming structured, not random. The Grammy Museum appearance and Lollapalooza booking therefore arrive at a moment when the group has stronger professional support behind its global ambitions. Their 2026 album, Wakas at Simula, is already part of that international story, with lead single Visa debuting at number 6 on Billboard's World Digital Song Sales chart, according to the Grammy Museum. And Chicago is not the endpoint. SB19 are scheduled for Summer Sonic in Tokyo on August 15th, placing them into another major international festival environment only weeks after Lollapalooza. Put those pieces together and the pattern becomes clear. The opportunities are no longer isolated appearances. Their touring, partnerships, music releases, and festival bookings are beginning to operate as parts of the same global strategy. The real question, what happens after the viral moment? History is easy to announce, but maintaining it is much harder. The Grammy Museum created an intimate opportunity for SB19 to prove that their reputation could survive without the scale of a concert production. Chicago then placed that reputation under a much larger public spotlight. But neither moment guarantees what comes next. Global audiences now have more chances to judge the group, and that raises the standard rather than lowering it. The vocals have to remain reliable. The choreography has to stay precise. That is the real pressure now. The Grammy Museum showed what SB19 could do in an intimate room. Chicago showed what happened when they took that performance into one of America's biggest festival environments. The next chapter will determine whether those moments were milestones or the beginning of something much larger.